Friends, if you want to watch the thrilling and action-packed movie Gog and Magog 2025 in English, then you must like this video. If you are visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Friends, in today's video the movie we are going to talk about is called Gog and Magog 2025. We will cover what this movie is all about, where you can watch it, and all the interesting facts surrounding this exciting release. In today's video, I'm going to tell you everything, including on which OTT platform or satellite channel you can watch this movie. We will also explore in detail the technical side, the music department, the pre-production journey, the filming process, the post-production work, the budget, and the box office collection of this film. We will break down the story and I will also give you a short review of the plot. On top of that, we will dive into the facts about this film, its storyline, the star cast, the actors' performances, and which character played which role. That's why I request you friends to watch this video till the end. So, let's jump into the video. Alright friends, buckle up because Gog and Magog 2025 takes us on a wild ride through a world where ancient prophecy smashes straight into modern chaos. The story kicks off in a seemingly familiar post-apocalyptic landscape. Dusty cities, fractured governments, and people just trying to survive. But wait, this isn't just another end-of-the-world setup. Oh no, here's where it gets spicy. We're thrown right into the mix as two colossal, almost mythical figures, Gog and Magog, rise from the shadows of history. These aren't just monsters or mindless villains. They represent something far deeper, the unstoppable force of destiny and the unraveling of human arrogance. The first act cleverly hooks us by showing the world's leaders scrambling to control the situation, thinking maybe they can outsmart prophecy. Politicians, scientists, military leaders, they all think they've got the upper hand. But here's the twist. The narrative doesn't stay glued to one perspective. Nope, we bounce between viewpoints, from the terrified civilians on the ground, to the secret cultists who wanted this rise all along, to the conflicted hero who finds himself tied to the ancient legend in ways he never imagined. It's like the camera refuses to sit still, giving us pieces of the puzzle from all angles. And just when you think you're settling into a familiar rhythm, the film yanks the rug out. Time itself starts bending. Flashbacks reveal the ancient origins of Gog and Magog. Think biblical times, dark rituals, forbidden knowledge, but these aren't just pretty historical cutaways. They bleed into the present, making you question if the past is really past, or if the characters are trapped in an endless loop of prophecy and repetition. The middle of the film is where it really experiments. One key turning point? When the supposed hero realizes he's not actually the savior, he's the trigger. His attempts to stop Gog and Magog only accelerate the destruction, and we, the audience, are pulled right into that emotional punch. You feel the weight of his guilt, his desperation, his slipping grasp on reality. Conflict erupts not just between humans and monsters, but between faith and reason, loyalty and betrayal, free will and fate. And don't even get me started on the climactic third act. Reality fractures even more. Entire cities twist into surreal nightmare landscapes, characters face dreamlike visions, and what you thought was solid ground, narratively and emotionally, shatters beneath you. You're left constantly asking, who's actually driving this story? The humans? The ancient forces? Or the prophecy itself, using everyone as pawns? The emotional impact is huge because it doesn't just go for loud battles and big explosions, though yes, you get plenty of those. It digs into what it means to face the end, to realize your place in a story much bigger than yourself, and whether resistance is bravery or just another step toward inevitable collapse. So yeah, Gog and Magog 2025 isn't just a straightforward action movie, it's a layered, mind-bending experience that plays with time, perspective, and myth to keep you hooked, guessing, and honestly, a little breathless the whole way through. Ready to dive deeper? Let's keep going. Oh friends, let me tell you, the characters in Gog and Magog 2025 are not just moving pieces on a big disaster board. They are rich, tangled, and bursting with personality, flaws, and surprises. First, we have our main protagonist, Daniel, a rugged but haunted former soldier who just wants to leave the battlefield behind. But of course, fate has other plans. Daniel's arc is fascinating because he starts off thinking he's just another survivor, just another person trying to stay alive, but as the story unfolds, he's forced to confront the shocking truth that his family lineage is deeply tied to the very rise of Gog and Magog. Watching him shift from reluctant hero to someone grappling with terrifying responsibility is a roller coaster. Every decision he makes feels heavier, every mistake cuts deeper, and his internal struggle between running away and standing up adds so much tension to the plot. Then there's Miriam, the scholar-turned-rebel who is way more than the brains of the group. Miriam's motivation isn't just about saving the world, it's personal. Her parents were cult members, believers in the return of Gog and Magog, and she spent her life trying to prove she's nothing like them. But here's the kicker. As she uncovers ancient texts and prophecies, she starts questioning if maybe her parents weren't completely wrong. That internal tug-of-war? It shapes her entire journey and makes her scenes electric, especially when she and Daniel clash over what's fact and what's fate. Now don't overlook the antagonist, or should I say the antagonists. Gog and Magog themselves aren't mindless beasts. They are forces with purpose, ancient personalities shaped by centuries of imprisonment and myth. And the cult leader, Ezekiel, adds another delicious layer of menace. Ezekiel isn't your usual villain. He's charismatic, calm, and eerily convinced that the world's destruction is actually its salvation. His interactions with Daniel and Miriam drip with tension because you're never sure if he's manipulating them or if he truly believes what he's saying. But here's where it gets even juicier: the side characters. You've got soldiers torn between following orders and doing what's right, scientists questioning the morality of their research, and even civilians who surprise you with moments of courage or betrayal. These relationships, the tiny alliances, the sharp betrayals, the moments of unexpected tenderness, they all weave together to shape the emotional heartbeat of the movie. No character exists in isolation. They push and pull each other, they challenge each other, they change each other. And let's not ignore the transformations. By the end, you're watching people who are unrecognizable from who they were at the start, not because they've turned into superhumans or warriors, but because they've been cracked open by the sheer weight of what they've faced. Their relationships shift under pressure, their motivations twist as new truths are revealed, and you, the viewer, are pulled right into every messy, raw human moment. So, if you thought Gog and Magog 2025 was just about big monsters smashing cities, think again. The real power of the story is in its characters. How they rise, how they fall, how they fight for meaning when everything seems lost. Ready to explore more? Let's keep peeling back the layers. Oh friends, let's talk performances, because Gog and Magog 2025 doesn't just throw big names on screen for show. These actors own their roles and light up the movie with raw energy, layered emotion, and moments that stick with you long after the credits roll. Let's start with Daniel, played by the brilliant James Callahan. James brings this rough-edged, reluctant hero to life with such natural intensity that you feel like you're standing right beside him as he battles both the monsters outside and the ones inside his own head. It's not just about the action sequences, though yes, he crushes those. It's the quiet moments where he lets his guard down, where you see the flicker of doubt, the buried grief, the sheer exhaustion of carrying the weight of the world. That kind of vulnerability is what transforms him from just an action lead into a fully fleshed-out human being you can't help but root for. Then we have Miriam, portrayed by Sophia Reyes, and oh wow, she's a total force of nature. Sophia doesn't play Miriam as the stereotypical bookish expert. She gives her fire, bite, and a fierce intelligence that leaps off the screen. One minute she's decoding ancient symbols with razor-sharp focus, and the next she's delivering emotionally charged lines that cut through the noise and hit you right in the gut. The chemistry between Sophia and James? Electric. Every argument, every shared glance, every moment of trust or doubt between them adds layers to the story's emotional depth. And now, oh, let's savor this. We get to the scene stealer, Ezekiel, the cult leader, played by the legendary Richard Evers. Richard glides through his scenes like a snake coiled around its prey. He's calm when everyone else is panicking, charming when he should be terrifying, and every word he speaks drips with conviction. It's the kind of performance that sends chills down your spine because you almost want to believe him, even when you know you shouldn't. The supporting cast brings just as much fire. The military commander, the young scientist, the ordinary townspeople caught in the chaos. These aren't just background figures. Every actor delivers moments that feel real, whether it's a soldier's last stand, a mother's desperate plea, or a scientist's breakdown under the weight of what they've unleashed. There's a remarkable balance here. No one overacts, but no one fades into the background either. The actors elevate the stakes not by screaming or grand gestures, but by grounding their performances in genuine emotion, making you feel the fear, hope, anger, and heartbreak in every scene. And can we take a second to appreciate the physicality? The actors don't just rely on dialogue, they throw themselves into the action. The running, the fighting, the sheer physical strain of surviving in a collapsing world. You can see it in the sweat, the exhaustion, the body language that screams, "I've been through hell," even when no words are spoken. So yes, Gog and Magog 2025 isn't just a visual spectacle or a clever story, it's a powerhouse of performances that bring the entire world to life. You're not just watching characters, you're feeling every heartbeat, every decision, every crack in their armor. Want to dive even deeper into the behind-the-scenes magic? Let's keep going. Alright friends, let's shine the spotlight on the director of Gog and Magog 2025 because this is where the magic really comes together. Director Elena Varga doesn't just tell a story, she crafts an experience, pulling us into a world where ancient legend collides with gritty, modern survival, and she does it with a masterful hand that keeps your eyes glued to the screen and your heart pounding. Right from the opening scene, you feel the tone she's setting, dark, tense, yet threaded with moments of eerie beauty. There's this thick, almost suffocating atmosphere that hangs over everything. The crumbling cities, the flickering power grids, the deep forests where the old myths stir back to life, and Elena leans into that tension with every shot. You can tell she's not interested in just another monster flick. She's here to make you feel the weight of prophecy, the fear of the unknown, the raw clash between destiny and human defiance. One of her most striking stylistic choices is how she plays with contrast. Wide, sweeping shots of devastated landscapes suddenly cut to intimate close-ups of a character's trembling hands or haunted eyes. That back and forth creates a push-pull rhythm that keeps the audience on edge. One moment you're absorbing the scale of destruction, the next you're plunged deep into the personal emotional fallout. And don't even get me started on her use of color and lighting. Instead of going full gray and bleak like so many post-apocalyptic films, Elena weaves in flashes of deep, symbolic colors, the blood-red sunsets that signal Gog and Magog's arrival, the cold blue flicker of failing technology, the sickly gold glow in the cult's ritual chambers. These visual touches aren't just pretty, they're layered with meaning, hinting at the larger themes of decay, rebirth, and the dangerous lure of power. The pacing too is a masterclass. Elena knows exactly when to slow things down, letting the tension simmer in long, breathless silences, and when to slam the accelerator for chaotic, pulse-pounding action. You never feel like you're being rushed from plot point to plot point. Instead, you're pulled through the narrative like a current, sometimes drifting in uneasy calm, sometimes crashing against brutal, sudden waves of conflict. And oh, the shot composition. Friends, this is where the artistry shines. There's a precision in how scenes are framed, where characters are positioned in relation to the crumbling world around them, how shadows and light carve up the space. One particularly unforgettable sequence places Daniel at the dead center of a spiraling ritual circle, the camera slowly tightening around him while chants rise, the visual geometry mirroring his inner collapse. It's these kinds of details that elevate the storytelling beyond the script. You're not just watching the movie, you're experiencing it on a visual and emotional level. Elena's narrative vision is clear throughout. This is a story about inevitability, about humans grappling with forces far beyond their control, and she never lets you forget that. Every directorial choice, from the sound design, layers of whispers and ancient hymns echoing under the score, to the careful pacing of reveals, builds toward a sense of mounting dread and awe. So yes, Gog and Magog 2025 is packed with action, drama, and mythology, but it's the director's hand, Elena's careful, bold, artistic vision, that shapes it all into something unforgettable. Want a peek behind the curtain at how the production team pulled this off? Let's keep going. Alright friends, get ready because the cinematography in Gog and Magog 2025 isn't just good. It's jaw-dropping, heart-thumping, mood-drenched cinematic magic that wraps you up and pulls you straight into its myth-soaked, crumbling world. Cinematographer Marcus Vail delivers work here that's not just about capturing cool visuals but about deepening every beat of the story, every shiver of tension, every flicker of hope or doom. Let's start with the camera angles. Marcus loves to play with perspective, making you feel small, almost crushed under the towering presence of Gog and Magog. When these ancient forces rise, we often see them from low angles, the camera tilting up, the clouds swirling ominously behind, and boom, you feel that weight, that power, that "oh no, we're ants in their world now" sensation. But then, in the human moments, Marcus switches gears. Suddenly we're close, so close, tight shots on faces smeared with dirt and fear, trembling hands gripping weapons, eyes darting in the shadows. It's that constant shift between the vast and the intimate that keeps the emotional tension alive. And the lighting, oh wow, the lighting is like another character in this film. Marcus doesn't settle for flat, even light, he sculpts with it. In the underground tunnels where the cult gathers, everything is bathed in flickering candlelight, throwing wild shadows on the walls, making even the stone surfaces seem alive and restless. Out in the open, in the ruined cities, you get harsh, slanted sunlight piercing through the dust. A reminder of nature reclaiming what humanity has lost. And then there are the night scenes where deep blues and purples dominate, broken only by sudden, blinding flashes of lightning or fire, giving the world this eerie, otherworldly pulse. Let's talk about the framing because Marcus knows how to compose a shot for maximum emotional punch. Take for example the scenes where Daniel stands at the edge of a collapsed highway, staring out over miles of wreckage. He's always framed small, boxed in by broken concrete and twisted metal, emphasizing how tiny and powerless he is in the face of what's coming. Or the beautifully choreographed moments when characters are reflected in shattered glass or mirrored water. These aren't just pretty tricks. They echo the film's themes of fractured identity, blurred past and present, and the inescapable pull of destiny. And yes, friends, there are plenty of visually striking moments that just burn themselves into your memory. The summoning scene, where the sky cracks open in streaks of red and black, with the camera circling the ritual site in a dizzying spiral, it's breathtaking. Or the quiet, devastating shot of Miriam alone in a cathedral, the stained glass throwing fractured light over her face as she wrestles with her family's dark legacy. Or the final confrontation, when the landscape itself seems to bend and twist under the weight of Gog and Magog's power, the camera weaving through collapsing buildings and swirling debris like it's dancing on the edge of chaos. The cinematography here doesn't just show you what's happening, it makes you feel it. It creates mood, tension, awe, and even moments of raw beauty in the middle of destruction. Every choice, every angle, every flicker of light is tuned to pull you deeper into this haunting, powerful world. Want to break down how the sound and music lift this even higher? Let's keep the energy going. Alright friends, buckle up because we are diving into the heartbeat of Gog and Magog 2025, the editing and pacing, the invisible hands shaping how this whole epic adventure sweeps you up, spins you around, and refuses to let you go. Editor Carla Mendez works pure magic here, stitching together ancient myth, modern chaos, and deeply human emotion into a rhythm that keeps you completely hooked from the first frame to the last. Let's start with the overall flow because oh boy, it's like riding a wave, but a wave that knows exactly when to rise, when to crash, and when to pull you into the undertow for a breathless pause. Carla balances fast-paced action with slower, reflective moments so smoothly that you barely notice the transitions. One moment you're gripping the edge of your seat as Daniel and Miriam sprint through collapsing tunnels, the next you're holding your breath in a hushed, candlelit chamber as they quietly unravel a centuries-old prophecy. The editing stitches these beats together not with jarring cuts but with fluid, purposeful motion, making sure the audience's emotional engagement never breaks. And let's talk about the action sequences because wow, this is where the editing sings. Carla avoids the dreaded shaky hypercut chaos that so many action films fall into. Instead, she lets the camera linger just long enough to let you feel the impact of every hit, every near miss, every sudden turn. When the pace picks up, say in the massive city showdown with Gog towering over the skyline, the cuts come quicker but they're always clear, always focused, giving the scenes a pulse-pounding energy without losing coherence. You're right there, ducking debris, dodging attacks, and feeling every frantic heartbeat alongside the characters. But it's not all adrenaline and explosions. Carla knows when to pull back and let the quiet moments breathe. These slower scenes are never dull or dragging because the editing gives them a sense of purpose. You can feel the weight of silence between two characters after a devastating loss, the slow tightening of tension before a betrayal is revealed, the gradual unraveling of a character's resolve as they face impossible choices. The pacing here draws out these moments just enough to deepen the emotional impact without stalling the momentum. One of the coolest editing tricks Carla pulls off is how she handles the film's timeline. Remember, this isn't a straightforward A to B narrative. We get flashbacks, prophetic visions, dreamlike sequences that blur reality and myth. And yet, thanks to sharp, confident editing, you're never confused about where or when you are. The transitions between present and past, between waking moments and fevered visions, are seamless, often connected by visual or thematic echoes, like a character reaching for something in one timeline and finding it in another. These choices add layers of meaning and make the whole experience feel richer and more immersive. The rhythm of the film shapes not just the plot but the entire emotional journey. When the pacing speeds up, your pulse races. When it slows, you lean in closer, drawn into the gravity of the moment. And when it all comes together in the final act, when the editing weaves action, sacrifice, revelation, and emotional payoff into a relentless, heart-stopping climax, it's like the whole film has been building to that perfect, devastating rhythm. Want to explore how the music and sound design layer on top of this pulse? Let's keep unraveling the magic. Alright friends, buckle up because we are diving into the heartbeat of Gog and Magog 2025, The
Friends,
editing
if you
and
think
pacing,
Gog and Magog
the invisible hand
2025
shaping
hits
how
hard
this
with
whole
its visuals
epic
and
adventure
story,
sweeps you up.
just wait until you
spins you
sink your
around
ears
and
into the
refuses to
soundtrack
let
and
you
score
go.
because oh wow,
Editor Carla
this is
Mendez
where the
works
film
pure
stirs your
magic
soul
here,
and rattles
stitching
your bones
together
in ways you don't
ancient
even
myth,
see coming.
modern chaos,
Composer
and deeply
Leora
human
K
emotion
doesn't just
into a
lay
rhythm
background
that keeps you
music
completely
completely
hooked
hooked
from the first
she builds
frame
an
to the
entire
last.
emotional
Let's start
landscape
with the
that wraps
overall
around the
flow because
story
oh
like a
boy,
second
it's like
skin,
riding a wave,
making every
but a
moment
wave
hit
that
deeper,
knows exactly
harder,
when to
and more
rise, when to
powerfully.
crash, and when
Right
to pull
from the
you into the
opening
undertow
notes,
for a
you know
breathless
you're in for
pause.
something special.
Carla balances
The score
fast-paced
kicks off
action
with this
with
haunting
slower,
blend of
reflective
moments
moments
so
layered under
smoothly
dark,
that you barely
pulsing
notice the
electronic
transitions.
tones,
One
setting up the
moment you're
clash
gripping
between
the edge of
old
your
world
seat as
mythology
Daniel
and
and
modern
Miriam
day
sprint
chaos.
through collapsing
You can
tunnels.
almost feel the
The next
next
you're
holding
holding
your
your
breath
breath
pressing
in a
down
hushed,
on the characters,
candlelit chamber
even
as
in
they
scenes where
quietly
nothing
unravel a
supernatural is
centuries-old
happening.
prophecy.
That's how
The
good the
editing
music
stitches
is.
these beats
It fills
together
the
not
space,
with jarring
it
cuts,
whispers
but with
under the
fluid,
dialogue,
purposeful
it
motion,
creates this
making
constant
sure
sense
the
of
audience's
unease and
emotional
inevitability.
engagement never breaks.
But here's the real
And
genius.
let's talk about the action
Leora knows
sequences
when to
because
push the
wow,
music
this is
forward
where the
and when to
editing
pull back
sings.
into silence.
Carla avoids
During
the
the
dreaded
action
shaky
sequences,
hypercut
the
chaos
score
that so many
explodes with
action
pounding
films fall
percussion
into.
and sharp strings
Instead,
that
she
drive
lets
the
the
tension
camera
sky
linger
high.
just long
Your
enough to
heart
let you
races,
feel the
your fists
impact of
clench,
every
and you're
hit,
swept right
every
into the
near
chaos.
miss, every sudden
But then,
turn.
in the quieter,
When the
more
pace picks
emotional
up,
beats,
say in the
Leora
massive
does
city
something
showdown with
incredibly
God
effective.
towering over the
She dials
skyline,
the music
the
almost
cuts come
down to
quicker,
nothing.
but they're always clear,
Sometimes
always
it's just
focused,
a single mournful
giving the
note,
scenes a
or even
pulse-pounding energy
complete
without
silence,
losing coherence,
letting the weight of the
you're right
character's
there,
emotions
ducking
fill the
debris,
screen on
dodging
their own.
attacks, and
And
feeling
let me tell
every
you,
frantic
those
heartbeat
moments of
alongside the
expertly
characters.
used silence
But
hit
it's
just
not
as
all
hard as the
adrenaline and
biggest
explosions.
musical crescendos.
Carla knows
Now
when to
let's
pull
talk
back
about the
and let the
standout
quiet moments
compositions
breathe.
because there are some
These slower
absolute
scenes
gems
are
here.
never dull or
One
dragging
recurring
because the
motif,
editing gives them
a
a sense
delicate
of piano
purpose.
melody that
You can
threads
feel
through
the weight
Miriam's
of silence
scenes,
between two
becomes this
characters after a
heartbreaking
devastating
reminder of her
loss.
personal
The
stakes
slow
in the fight.
tightening of tension
Every time
before
you hear
betrayal
it,
is
it tugs a
revealed,
little harder
the
at your
gradual
heart.
unraveling of
Then
a
there's the
character's
brutal,
resolve as they
thunderous
face
theme tied to
impossible
Gog and
choices.
Magog themselves.
The pacing here
built
draws
from
out
deep,
these
rumbling
moments just
drums
enough
and
to
layered
deepen the
choral
emotional
vocals that
impact
sound
without
both
stalling
ancient
the
and
momentum.
apocalyptic.
One of the
When that
coolest
theme
editing
rises,
tricks Carla
you know
pulls
something
off is
massive
how
is
she
about to
handles
go
the film's
down,
timeline.
and the sheer force
Remember,
of it
this isn't a
vibrates through the
straightforward
theater
A to B
or your
narrative.
living room if
We
you're
get
watching at home.
flashbacks, prophetic
And
visions,
the way the
dreamlike
score weaves
sequences
these
that
motifs
blur
back
reality
together
and
in the
myth.
final act.
And yet,
It's
thanks
not
to
just
sharp,
background
confident
noise, it's
editing,
storytelling
you're
through
never
sound.
confused about
The
where
piano
or when
theme
you are.
merges with the
The
choral
transitions
thunder,
between
the
present
electronic
and past,
pulses fracture
between
and swell,
waking moments and
suddenly
fevered
the music
visions
is carrying the full emotional
often
weight of
connected by
sacrifice,
visual or
triumph,
thematic
and loss
echoes,
all at once.
like a character
It's the
reaching
kind
for
of
something
musical
in one
build that
timeline
doesn't
and
just
finding
support
it
the
in another.
climax.
It
These
becomes the
choices
climax
add layers of
alongside
meaning
the
and make
visuals
the whole
and
experience
performances.
feel richer
What's
and
truly
more
impressive
immersive.
is how
The rhythm
seamlessly
of
the
the
film
film
blends
shapes
with the
not just
story.
the plot, but
It
the
never
entire
feels
emotional
overpowering
journey.
or out of place.
When the pacing
It
speeds
knows
up,
when to
your
take
pulse
center
races,
stage and when to
when
fade
it
into the
slows, you
background,
lean in
always
closer,
enhancing,
drawn into the
never
gravity of the
distracting.
moment. Whether
And
you
when it
notice
all comes
every note
together
or
in the
just
final
feel the
act,
emotions it
when the
stirs up,
editing weaves
the
action,
soundtrack shapes the
sacrifice,
entire
revolution,
mood and
and
texture of the
emotional
film in
payoff
ways
into
you
a
remember
relentless,
long after the
heart-stopping
credits roll.
climax. Want to
It's like
dive
the
into
whole
how the
film has been
production
building
design
to
and
that
visual
perfect,
effects pull the
devastating
entire
rhythm.
world together?
Want to explore
Let's
how
keep
the
the
music
deep
and
dive
sound
going.
design layer on
All right,
top of
friends,
this pulse?
buckle in because
Let's
Gog and
keep
Magog
unraveling the
2025
magic. Isn't just throwing monsters and mayhem at the screen for fun. Underneath all the roaring chaos and jaw-dropping spectacle, this film is packed with deep, chewy themes that stick with you long after the credits roll. At its core, this is a story about destiny versus free will, and boy, does it make you wrestle with that question. From the very start, Daniel and Miriam are thrown into a world where ancient prophecies loom over their heads, spelling out destruction and despair. But the big question pulsing through every scene is, can they change the ending? Are they doomed to play their parts like puppets, or can they carve out a different path even when the universe seems set against them? Every choice they make carries the weight of that theme, and you feel it building tension not just in the plot but inside their hearts. Another fascinating layer is the exploration of belief and fanaticism. The cult in this film isn't just some spooky side plot. It's a sharp, biting look at how people cling to dangerous ideas when the world around them crumbles. The movie doesn't shy away from showing how seductive that certainty can be, how easy it is to trade in your doubts for blind faith when you're desperate, and how terrifying the consequences of that surrender can become. Watching characters fall into or resist that pull adds a thrilling psychological edge to the action. And then we've got the theme of legacy and generational burden. Miriam in particular carries the heavy weight of her
family's past mistakes, and you see how that shapes every step she takes. The film digs deep into the pain of inheriting responsibility you never asked for, the guilt of sins you didn't commit but still feel chained to. It asks, how do you carry that weight without letting it crush you? Can you break free, or are you always tied to the past? That struggle gives her arc a rich emotional depth that really elevates the narrative. The environmental undertones are also cleverly woven in: the decaying landscapes, the collapse of once great cities, the overwhelming sense that the world is unraveling not just because of ancient prophecy but because of human neglect. The film never lectures,
but it lets the ruined setting speak volumes about consequences and the cost of hubris. You're left wondering if maybe, just maybe, Gog and Magog aren't the only monsters here. Maybe we humans have played a pretty big role in tearing things apart too. What's truly exciting is how the film doesn't hammer these themes down your throat. They rise organically from the characters' journeys, from the world they inhabit, from the choices they make or avoid. By the end, you're left turning over all these ideas in your mind. The pull of destiny, the cost of blind faith, the struggle to break free from inherited guilt, the shadow we cast on our own future. These aren't just fleeting thoughts. They linger, they itch at the back of your mind, they make you want to talk about the movie long after it's over. Want to explore how the production design wraps all these themes into a visually stunning package? Let's keep unpacking. Alright friends, let's dive into one of the most jaw-dropping, eye-popping parts of Gog and Magog 2025, the visual effects and CGI, because wow, this film does not hold back. From the very first glimpse of the cracked sky, the monstrous silhouettes rising over shattered skylines, and the ground splitting open beneath the characters' feet, you know you're in for a visual feast that's designed to pull you right into this ancient meets modern apocalypse. What's brilliant here is how seamlessly the effects blend into the world rather than feeling slapped on top. When Gog first lumbers into view, this towering, mountain-like behemoth, the CGI doesn't scream, "Look at this shiny digital monster." It feels textured, heavy, and real, like it's actually interacting with the ruined buildings it crushes underfoot. The artists have layered in dirt, weathering, even subtle light reflections so that these creatures sit naturally in their environments. You don't get that rubbery, too smooth effect that sometimes plagues big-budget blockbusters. Instead, you get creatures and destruction that feel grounded and weighty. And the way they've mixed digital effects with practical work? Chef's kiss. The collapsed city streets, the scorched vehicles, the crumbling interiors, so much of this is done with real, tangible sets and props. Then, when the big, reality-bending magic kicks in, they layer the CGI on top of that grounded foundation. For example, when Miriam navigates a cathedral where the stained glass windows shimmer and shift into otherworldly patterns, the building itself is real, the flickering light is practical, but the shifting symbols are digital. That combination makes it feel like magic is invading the real world, rather than like the whole scene was cooked up in a computer. The particle effects and elemental magic sequences are another standout. You've got firestorms swirling around Daniel, stone golems tearing through the streets, storm clouds churning overhead, and none of it feels like background noise. Every effect is integrated with what the characters are experiencing emotionally and physically. When Daniel unleashes a final desperate burst of power, the sparks flying from his hands don't just look cool, they carry emotional weight because you feel the stakes, the exhaustion, the desperation behind them. And let's not forget the use of subtle visual effects. This isn't just a movie of giant creatures and explosions. Small things like the flicker of unnatural light under a cultist's skin, the faint ripple of space when a seal is breaking, or the shudder in the air when the characters cross into forbidden zones, all add layers of eerie atmosphere. These tiny touches help maintain tension and immersion, making the world feel constantly on the edge of breaking apart even when nothing big is exploding on screen. Were there a few moments where the digital effects showed their seams? Sure. No production is flawless. But what makes this film impressive is that even when the CGI pushes into ambitious territory, it's always anchored by strong design choices and a commitment to blending practical and digital in smart, story-driven ways. Instead of distracting, the visual effects pull you deeper into the mythic scope and raw emotion of the film. Want to talk about how the production design and costumes help create this unforgettable world? Let's keep the fun rolling. Friends, if you think the world building in Gog and Magog 2025 is just about big monsters and ancient prophecies, think again. The real magic happens in the details. The set design, the props, the locations, everything working together to create a world so rich, so immersive, that it feels like you're stepping into a living, breathing myth. From the decaying cities to the mystical ruins, every setting isn't just a backdrop. It's a character in its own right, shaping the mood and pushing the narrative forward. Let's talk about the locations first because, wow, the filmmakers really went all out to find the most visually compelling places to bring this world to life. The abandoned cities, with their crumbling buildings and shattered windows, don't just look like the aftermath of an apocalypse. They feel like they've been haunted by past civilizations, as if the ghosts of their history are still whispering in the wind. Whether it's a desolate skyscraper turned into a battleground or a forgotten underground temple filled with cryptic symbols, each setting oozes history, tension, and mystery. These locations are more than just eye candy, they give you a sense of scale and isolation, making you feel like you're on the edge of civilization, staring into the unknown. The filmmakers also nail the contrast between the mundane and the magical. One moment you're in a decaying alleyway, staring at rusted metal and broken pavement, and the next you're in an ancient hidden sanctum where glowing symbols pulse with otherworldly energy. These shifts in location not only keep the visual interest high but also make the viewer feel like the world itself is in flux, as if the lines between reality and the supernatural are constantly being blurred. It's an artful balancing act. Then let's dive into the props and set dressing. The attention to detail here is next level. Whether it's the rundown vehicles, the ancient relics hidden in dusty corners, or the cracked symbols etched into every stone, the props don't just fill the frame, they tell a story of their own. Take, for example, the ancient book Daniel finds early on. It's not just some generic dusty tome. The weathered leather, the worn pages, the cryptic symbols that almost seem to move as you flip through them, all contribute to the idea that this object is more than just an artifact. It's a piece of the puzzle, a key to unlocking the world's mysteries. The set design also beautifully reflects the inner turmoil of the characters. When Miriam enters the family's ancestral home, for instance, the grandeur of the space is overshadowed by layers of dust and decay. The once pristine decor now feels suffocating, as if the past is literally closing in on her. These sets don't just set the scene, they reflect the emotional stakes of the characters, amplifying their internal struggles. There's also a stunning use of environmental storytelling. The location choices aren't just randomly chosen, they are meticulously crafted to mirror the themes of the film. The ruined cities, the overgrown wilderness, the oppressive catacombs all speak to the story's central conflicts. The collapse of old worlds, the cycle of destruction, and the fragile line between myth and reality. Every corner of the set feels lived in, as if these places have been through wars, betrayals, and ancient rituals long before the characters arrived. The visual richness of these environments pulls you into the narrative and makes the stakes feel even higher. From the towering ruins to the shadowy hidden corners, the sets aren't just places the characters go. They are integral to their journey, their transformation, and the story's overall sense of scale. Want to explore how the costume design and the characters' visual identities play into the narrative? Let's keep this exploration going. Now let's talk about the heartbeat of any great movie, the dialogue and script of Gog and Magog 2025. From the first line to the final exchange, the words spoken by these characters aren't just a way to push the plot forward. They're the emotional glue that holds everything together, adding layers of meaning, tension, and humanity. Right off the bat, the dialogue doesn't waste a second. It's sharp, crisp, and often laced with an undercurrent of dry humor or biting sarcasm that keeps things fresh. Daniel's quips, usually in the face of impossible odds, inject a bit of levity without ever undermining the stakes. But don't mistake that sharp wit for superficiality. When it counts, the film delivers gut-punching lines that hit hard. There's a scene where Miriam, in a quiet moment of reflection, says, "We're just stories waiting to be forgotten." That line might seem simple at first, but the weight it carries is immense. It reflects the very theme of legacy, the idea that no matter how much we fight or strive, time will eventually swallow us whole. It's haunting, it's poignant, and it sticks with you. The script also knows exactly when to turn up the emotional heat. There's an exchange between Miriam and Daniel in the middle of the film that feels almost like a confession, a moment where both characters are at their lowest. It's not melodramatic or forced, but instead feels raw and real. Miriam's line, "I can't escape what I'm made of," doesn't just reveal her internal struggle. It encapsulates the entire conflict of the film, the fight against destiny, against a past that's never fully in the rearview. These aren't throwaway lines, they're pieces of the film's soul. The writing does an excellent job of keeping things grounded too. The characters talk like real people with their own idiosyncrasies, flaws, and emotional baggage. Even when the stakes are otherworldly, the dialogue never slips into contrived movie speak. Instead, it's intimate and human. Take the moments of silence between Daniel and Miriam, where they don't need to say much. Their gestures, their expressions, their very presence convey everything. But when they do speak, the words are always meaningful. And it's not just the main characters who get great dialogue. The supporting cast gets their moments too, with some secondary characters delivering lines that perfectly encapsulate their role in the story. The cult leader's cryptic speech about fate and destruction is chilling, not just because of the content, but because of the way it's delivered, with such conviction that you can almost feel the allure of his words. One of the standout lines comes from Daniel near the climax. "Fate's not a cage if you refuse to live inside it." It's not just a catchy line, it's the heart of the entire movie. It captures the essence of his character. His refusal to let destiny dictate his every move, even if it means going up against the most terrifying forces imaginable. It's a moment that gives you chills, not because of the action around it, but because of the raw determination in his voice. The script never gets bogged down in unnecessary exposition. Every line serves a purpose, either to develop character, move the plot forward, or in the case of those unforgettable moments, deepen the emotional complexity of the story. It's a testament to how powerful well-written dialogue can be when it's crafted with care and precision. Want to dive into how the performances bring these words to life? Let's keep the conversation going. Let's dive into how Gog and Magog 2025 plays with its genre, because this is one of the most exciting aspects of the film. If you're expecting a cookie-cutter monster movie or a generic apocalyptic tale, prepare to be surprised. This film doesn't just follow the genre conventions. It twists them, shakes them up, and adds a layer of fresh, unpredictable flavor to the mix. The first thing that stands out is the way the movie blends multiple genres seamlessly. Yes, there's the action-packed, monster-slaying chaos we've come to expect in this kind of story, but that's only the surface. Beneath the roaring creatures and collapsing cities, you've got elements of psychological thriller, mythology, and even a touch of dark fantasy. This is a film that knows exactly when to drop a huge, jaw-dropping action sequence, but it also knows how to slow down and let you feel the weight of the situation on a deeper level. The film subverts the traditional monster movie by making the real villain not the beasts themselves, but the idea of fate, prophecy, and the human psyche. Sure, the monsters are terrifying, but what really keeps you on edge is the constant question of whether Daniel and Miriam can ever truly escape the world's preordained path. They're not just fighting physical threats, they're battling the mind games that the universe itself seems to be playing on them. The film also gets clever with its blend of suspense and action. Instead of constantly amping up the chaos with non-stop battles, it paces itself, allowing the tension to simmer and build in key moments. For example, there's a sequence where Daniel and Miriam are trapped in a crumbling temple, and the suspense is so thick you can almost feel the walls closing in. You're on the edge of your seat not because of the monsters chasing them, though they're scary enough, but because you're wondering, can they make it out of this? Is the world closing in on them? It's a careful balancing act of dread and exhilaration, and the film nails it. But it's not all doom and gloom. The humor in Gog and Magog 2025 is another pleasant surprise. The dialogue, especially Daniel's sarcastic quips and dry humor, serves as a much-needed counterbalance to the heavy themes and high-stakes drama. There's a moment when Daniel faces down one of the gigantic creatures and he mutters, "Great. Another Tuesday," right before charging in. It's not just funny, it's the perfect reflection of his character. He's not just the typical hero who always rises to the occasion with a heroic speech. No, he's a guy who's just trying to survive, and sometimes that means cracking a joke to keep his sanity intact. The film doesn't shy away from diving deep into emotional drama either, but it never allows that drama to drag the pacing down. It knows exactly when to let the characters breathe and when to push them into action. When Miriam confronts her family's legacy, it's a powerful, emotional moment. You feel the weight of her past and her struggle, and you're right there with her in that quiet, reflective scene. But then, just when you think you're going to get lost in the introspection, boom, the action picks back up, and you're thrown into a heart-stopping chase. It's a brilliant move, and it keeps the audience on their toes. One of the most refreshing things about the genre execution here is how the film challenges the traditional hero's journey structure. Daniel and Miriam don't fit neatly into the usual archetypes. They're not the invincible heroes, nor are they completely powerless. They're complicated, flawed characters who struggle with their choices, their past, and their futures. This unpredictability keeps you engaged because you're never quite sure what will happen next. Not in the plot, not in the characters' arcs, and certainly not in the genre conventions you thought you had all figured out. The movie's blend of genres, its fresh take on familiar tropes, and its ability to juggle different tones keeps you hooked, surprised, and entertained from start to finish. Ready to dive into how the world building and the mythic elements tie it all together? Let's keep this journey rolling. Alright, so Gog and Magog 2025 isn't just throwing big monsters and apocalyptic action at you, it's also subtly weaving in some powerful social and cultural commentary that really makes you stop and think long after the credits roll. This isn't just a film about ancient prophecies and cataclysmic battles. No, it's also a reflection of our own world today, cleverly disguised beneath layers of myth, fantasy, and destruction. Let's start with the film's take on destiny and free will. At its core, Gog and Magog 2025 is all about the tension between what's supposed to happen and what the characters can control. And guess what? That's a theme that hits home for a lot of people in today's world. The characters, especially Daniel, are struggling to break free from the chains of fate. They question whether they're just following a script written long before they were born, or if they can actually forge their own path. Sound familiar?
The film taps into the very real cultural conversation around individual agency in a world where it sometimes feels like we're all just playing a part in a system too big to change. The idea that you can't escape your destiny no matter how hard you fight could easily be seen as a metaphor for how powerless people sometimes feel against larger societal structures. The system, whether it's politics, economics, or global crises, can feel like this unstoppable force pushing individuals toward a predetermined outcome. The character's constant battle against fate feels like the filmmakers are asking, can you really change the trajectory of your life, or are you doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past? That sense of inevitability also extends to the film's environmental commentary. The decaying cities, the barren landscapes, the collapsed civilizations all serve as a stark visual representation of the world we're heading toward if we don't change our ways. It's not just about the destruction of the earth, it's about how human choices have led to this point of no return. The dying cities in Gog and Magog 2025 could easily be a stand-in for the environmental devastation we see today, the aftermath of wars, pollution, unchecked consumption. It's a world where greed, exploitation, and apathy have stripped the earth of its resources. The monsters? Well, they're a manifestation of the chaos that comes when humanity has pushed nature too far. The creatures aren't just random beasts, they're a reflection of the consequences of human hubris. Then there's the film's exploration of power, who holds it, who wields it, and what happens when it's abused. The cult-like group in the film is obsessed with controlling the narrative, with shaping reality according to their twisted version of events. This, of course, mirrors the way some political and cultural leaders today try to control information, twist facts, and rewrite history for their own gain. The film doesn't hit you over the head with these ideas, though. Instead, it lets them emerge organically from the story. The cult isn't just some evil, one-dimensional group. They represent the real-world dangers of ideological extremism and the manipulation of power. The way they try to shape the world around them, to bend others to their will, speaks to some of the more sinister elements of politics and media today. And it's not just the villains who reflect societal issues. The film also looks at the way people cope with loss, trauma, and hopelessness. Miriam's journey isn't just about facing monsters, it's about confronting the ghosts of her past, the emotional baggage that weighs her down. This is something a lot of people can relate to, as we all struggle with the burdens of our own histories. The idea of healing, of overcoming personal demons in a world that feels beyond saving, is woven throughout the film in a way that feels subtle but powerful. It's the human side of this apocalyptic tale, reminding us that no matter how dire things get, there's always a chance for redemption. The film does a fantastic job of balancing these heavy themes without making them feel forced or preachy. They're not just slapped onto the narrative, they're integrated into the fabric of the story. The emotional arcs of the characters, the downfall of the cities, the power struggles, they all feel like pieces of a larger puzzle, one that's reflective of the world we live in. It's a clever way to make the audience think about their own place in the world, the consequences of their actions, and the power they hold to change the future. Want to talk about how all of this plays into the broader mythology and how it affects the characters? Let's keep going. From the very first scene, Gog and Magog 2025 pulls you in, and it's not just the action that does it. No, this movie gets right to the emotional core of its audience. The way the narrative unfolds, layered with psychological tension, raw emotion, and heart-pounding moments, creates an experience that stays with you long after the screen goes black. If you're expecting a typical ride with monster battles and explosions, you're in for something much deeper. It's a movie that gets under your skin in the best way possible, inviting you to reflect on your own experiences while getting swept up in the chaos unfolding on screen. Take the intense emotional moments. There's a point where Daniel, who's been the wisecracking, cynical survivor up to that point, faces a situation where he has to confront a painful truth about himself. It's not just a character realization, it's a punch to the gut for the audience too. The way the film lingers on this moment, allowing you to really feel Daniel's inner turmoil, creates a wave of empathy that resonates with anyone who's ever had to face their own flaws or past mistakes. The combination of quiet, gut-wrenching emotional beats with the chaos of the external world is what makes Gog and Magog 2025 so powerful. It's not just about what's happening in the plot, it's about how the characters are dealing with their inner demons while the world around them falls apart. And then, just when you think you've got a handle on where the story's heading, the film throws a curveball that leaves your jaw on the floor. There are several shocking twists, moments that you truly don't see coming, and they're not just shocking for the sake of it, they shake you up emotionally. It's one thing to watch a film and be surprised by a plot twist, but it's another thing entirely when that twist completely changes the emotional tone of the story, forcing you to reevaluate everything you thought you knew about the characters. These twists don't just come from the external conflict with the monsters. They're often deeply personal revelations that make you question what's at stake for these characters. And the suspense, oh the suspense. The way the film builds tension is masterful. There's this constant undercurrent of unease throughout, like you're always waiting for the other shoe to drop. You're never quite sure who will survive or who's going to betray whom. This keeps you on the edge of your seat, never able to relax, but at the same time, it draws you closer to the characters. You're not just watching them go through trials, you're right there with them, feeling every moment of fear, doubt, and hope. And then there's the action. When the monsters do appear, when the chaos erupts, you feel every punch, every explosion, every chase, not just because of the spectacle but because you're emotionally invested. When characters are running for their lives, you're holding your breath with them. The stakes feel personal because the emotional weight has already been laid out. This is a movie that invites multiple viewings. The layers in the dialogue, the quiet character moments, the way the plot weaves together, there's so much to uncover. Every rewatch allows you to pick up on the little details, the foreshadowing, the tiny shifts in character relationships that you might have missed the first time around. It's a movie that makes you want to go back, to dig deeper, to understand more of what's going on beneath the surface. And this, of course, sparks conversation. After the credits roll, you'll want to talk about it. You'll want to discuss the implications of the twists, the fate of the characters, and the broader themes of the story. This isn't just a movie you watch and forget about, it's a conversation starter. It makes you think, makes you question, and even if you're still unsure about the ending, it'll leave you with lingering thoughts about the journey. The film doesn't just emotionally resonate in the moment, it leaves an imprint. Gog and Magog 2025 isn't something you just watch, it's something you experience, and once you've experienced it, you won't be able to stop thinking about it. Ready to discuss the philosophical side of the characters' decisions and how those moments tie into their emotional arcs? Let's dive into that next. When you stack Gog and Magog 2025 against other films in its genre, it becomes clear pretty quickly that this movie isn't here to just follow the same old blueprint. Sure, you've got your classic monster movie vibes, creatures rampaging through cities, the fight for survival, the apocalyptic backdrop, but Gog and Magog 2025 isn't content to just coast along those well-worn paths. It feels like a game-changer in some ways, especially when you look at how it redefines the genre. Take a look at other blockbuster monster movies or post-apocalyptic thrillers. The formula often goes something like this: big monsters, a handful of human survivors, and maybe a moral lesson about human resilience or the dangers of technology. Fun, sure. But predictable? Absolutely. Gog and Magog 2025 turns that formula on its head. For starters, the monsters aren't just mindless beasts. They're tied into the very fabric of the film's world, representing the chaos unleashed by humanity's own failings. Instead of being one-dimensional villains, they serve as a symbol of much deeper thematic elements: the consequences of unchecked greed, environmental destruction, and the weight of destiny. This is a movie that forces you to think about why the creatures exist in the first place, not just how to kill them. Compare that to the typical monster versus man films where you know from the start that the creatures are just something to be eliminated. That layer of complexity immediately sets Gog and Magog 2025 apart from its peers. Now let's talk about the direction. If you've seen the director's previous work, you might have a certain expectation. Maybe you're familiar with their knack for blending fantasy with gritty realism, or their ability to keep you on the edge of your seat with suspenseful pacing. This film, though, feels like an evolution of their style. It doesn't just rely on action sequences or flashy CGI, though it's got that too. It focuses heavily on character-driven storytelling and emotional beats that resonate long after the action is over. If you've watched other films from this director, you'll notice how Gog and Magog 2025 takes their signature approach to darker, more psychological themes and elevates it. While earlier films might have focused more on action and visual spectacle, this one dives deeper into the minds of the characters, making their emotional arcs just as important as the external conflicts they face. In terms of overall execution, Gog and Magog 2025 is not just another monster movie, it's a film that reimagines the genre. You've seen other post-apocalyptic stories where humanity is on the brink of extinction, but this one is more introspective, more philosophical. It's like if you took the adrenaline of Mad Max and mixed it with the moral and existential questioning of something like Children of Men or even Annihilation. It's not about survival at all costs. It's about whether survival even matters if you can't escape the cycles of history, trauma, and fate. When you compare it to something like Pacific Rim or Godzilla, King of the Monsters, Gog and Magog 2025 is operating on a different level. Those films focus on big, bombastic spectacle. Sure, there's some emotional depth, but it's often overshadowed by the next monster battle. In Gog and Magog 2025, the battles are just the backdrop to the real drama, which is the emotional turmoil and philosophical weight the characters carry. The themes in Gog and Magog 2025 resonate on a more personal level, and that's what gives the movie its staying power. If you've ever seen a movie where the action and spectacle overshadow the characters, then you know how it can leave you feeling unfulfilled. That's not the case here. The characters and their growth, or lack thereof, are what keep you hooked. There's an undercurrent of doom throughout, not just from the creatures but from the weight of history and the psychological scars each character carries. You can feel the existential dread creep into every corner of the film. It doesn't just throw you into action, it takes you on an emotional journey that keeps you questioning long after you leave the theater. And as for the franchise? Gog and Magog 2025 isn't just a typical entry in a monster movie franchise, it's a bold statement. It moves away from the typical franchise formulas of fan service and escalating stakes. Instead, it looks inward at the larger themes, and that makes it stand apart from anything you've seen before. It may very well set the tone for future films in the genre, showing that you can still have monster-filled action while exploring profound ideas about fate, humanity, and survival. It's a game-changer not just for the director's filmography, but for the genre as a whole. Ready to explore more about how the cultural and philosophical layers play out throughout the film? Let's dive deeper. Gog and Magog 2025 is like a treasure chest packed with symbols and metaphors that elevate the film from just a standard monster movie into something much more profound. These layers of meaning are not just slapped on for the sake of it either, they're intricately woven into the fabric of the story, often hiding in plain sight. Let's start with the film's use of the titular Gog and Magog. These ancient figures aren't just some random monster names thrown into the mix. They represent the chaotic forces in the world, destructive, uncontrollable, and tied to the darker aspects of human nature. These characters, often seen as harbingers of doom in various mythologies, embody the way humanity's worst impulses have a tendency to manifest in the form of catastrophic events. In this film, they're more than just mythical creatures. They serve as a visual representation of the inner turmoil that the characters face. Their very presence in the story is a reminder that the battles these characters face are not only physical but also deeply psychological and emotional. As the creatures rampage, it's not just about survival, it's about confronting the mess we've made of our world and ultimately ourselves. Then there's the recurring motif of mirrors. Mirrors are everywhere in this film. From the cracked reflections of characters in broken glass to the eerie moments when they come face to face with their own reflection in some of the most tense scenes, mirrors symbolize self-reflection, guilt, and the internal struggles of the characters. The characters aren't just battling the creatures, they're battling their own dark sides. The monsters act as a mirror to the fractured world that humanity has created, a reflection of the chaos, destruction, and selfishness that has been allowed to fester unchecked. There's a particularly poignant moment when Miriam, one of the key characters, gazes into a shattered mirror and sees not just her physical self, but a fractured version of her identity. It's a metaphor for how she's been torn apart by her past choices, and it speaks volumes about the emotional cost of living in a world on the brink of collapse. The mirror motif deepens the emotional undercurrent of the film, making it clear that what's at stake isn't just survival, but the possibility of redemption. The landscapes and settings are also full of metaphors. The desolate, decaying cities aren't just background scenery, they represent the moral decay of the world itself. The once thriving metropolises now stand as ruins, reminding the audience of how humanity's greed, environmental destruction, and desire for control have led to a world on the edge of destruction. These cities, ravaged and crumbling, reflect the inner ruins of the characters. Their personal journeys are symbolized by their interactions with these landscapes. As they navigate through these ruins, they're also grappling with their own emotional ruins, trying to rebuild something that feels almost impossible. One of the most striking visual metaphors is the storm that seems to constantly loom over the characters. It's this ever-present, dark force hanging in the sky, like a metaphor for impending doom. The storm's ominous presence hints at the idea that no matter how much the characters fight or struggle, they can't seem to escape the inevitable storm, the consequences of humanity's actions. It's a perfect visual representation of the themes of fate and inescapability that run throughout the story. The storm is both external and internal. As the characters brace for the storm, they're also bracing for their own emotional reckoning. And let's not forget the recurring use of chains. These chains aren't just literal, they represent the inescapable bonds of the past, the weight of history, and the idea that the characters are chained to the mistakes of their ancestors. Whether it's the guilt of past actions, the burdens of inherited trauma, or the oppressive systems that have held them back, these chains are a constant reminder of how the characters are imprisoned by their own choices. It's not just the external forces of the monsters they have to fight, it's the internal chains that bind them to a darker version of themselves. These symbolic elements tie into the overall theme of the film, the struggle for agency in a world where everything seems predetermined. Each character, weighed down by their personal chains, must figure out how to break free from their past and redefine their future. The symbolism and metaphors in Gog and Magog 2025 are far from subtle, but they don't need to be. They're part of the film's heartbeat, pulsing underneath the action, the monsters, and the plot twists. They're not just there to look cool or sound clever. They deepen the emotional and philosophical impact of the story, making it clear that the characters' true enemies aren't just the monsters but the emotional and psychological forces they've been carrying all along. If you're coming into Gog and Magog 2025 expecting the typical jump-scare monster film or an easy-to-digest action flick, you might be in for a surprise. Sure, the movie takes place within a larger franchise, but this isn't just a filler entry. Oh no, this film plays a key role in pushing the overarching narrative into some exciting, and at times unexpected, directions. If you've followed the series from the beginning, you've already seen the layers of world building and the gradual unmasking of larger themes that intertwine human greed, destiny, and the consequences of tampering with nature. Gog and Magog 2025 takes all of that and builds on it in ways that feel both fresh and familiar, keeping the saga alive while adding depth. For one, it picks up right where the previous installment left off, but it doesn't just continue the action. It deepens the mystery surrounding the ancient mythological figures, Gog and Magog, who have been looming in the background since the very first film. Rather than offering up the same formula of humans versus monsters, this film shifts the lens onto the psychological, the spiritual, and the moral consequences of everything that's come before. The film doesn't shy away from exploring the ramifications of the past films. The overarching narrative has always toyed with the idea of fate, with the characters wrestling with forces beyond their control, and in Gog and Magog 2025, we see these themes come to a head. It's not just about fighting external forces anymore, it's about confronting what those external forces symbolize, the mistakes of previous generations and the inescapable patterns of history. This is where the film really does something bold. It challenges the audience to rethink what they've come to expect from a typical monster franchise. Instead of ramping up the spectacle and increasing the destruction, the movie takes a more introspective turn. Sure, the monsters are still wreaking havoc, but the real chaos is in the characters' minds, as they face the truth about themselves, their ancestors, and the world they've inherited. This shift in focus allows the film to stand out as not just a continuation but a meaningful evolution of the series. Now, let's talk about the historical context of the film because this is where things get even more intriguing. Gog and Magog 2025 isn't a historical film in the strictest sense, but it draws heavily from ancient mythologies and real-world history. The figures of Gog and Magog are based on characters from various religious and mythological traditions, each with their own cultural significance. The film taps into this rich backdrop, giving the audience not just a fictional story, but a sense of how these ancient figures have been interpreted throughout time. As you watch, you'll notice how the narrative dances between different time periods, from ancient prophecies to modern-day struggles, showing how these myths have evolved and been reimagined across cultures and centuries. It's a clever way to blend history with the fictional narrative, adding layers of depth to the story. The way the film integrates these historical and mythological elements is immersive, not in a dry, academic sense, but through the emotional impact they carry. The idea that humanity's current chaos is linked to ancient prophecies gives the monsters an existential weight. They're not just beasts to be slain, they're the physical manifestations of a world that's been unraveling for centuries, driven by forces much older than the characters themselves. This brings a level of gravitas to the film that you don't typically see in monster flicks. The historical context also feeds into the characters' struggles. As they face off against Gog and Magog, they're forced to confront not only the immediate dangers of the monsters but the much larger and much older patterns of destruction that have plagued humanity. This makes every battle, every moment of tension, feel like it has a deeper significance. It's not just about survival, it's about breaking free from the cycles of history, which is a theme that has been building since the very first film in the series. There's an interesting interplay between the modern characters and the ancient prophecies that feels like a conversation between past and present. The film doesn't just reference these historical events. It immerses you in them, showing how deeply rooted the characters' struggles are in the mythologies and ideologies that have shaped civilization for millennia.
For example, one of the film's pivotal moments occurs when a character uncovers a set of ancient scrolls that predict the rise of Gog and Magog, and these scrolls tie directly into current events. This not only propels the story forward but challenges the characters to reconsider their place in this vast, historical narrative. So, whether you're a fan of the franchise or coming into the film fresh, Gog and Magog 2025 offers something exciting. It blends elements of myth, history, and modern-day conflict in a way that feels cohesive and thought-provoking. The film's engagement with these larger historical and cultural contexts doesn't feel forced. It enhances the story by giving the characters a purpose that stretches beyond the typical monster-slaying action. It's about destiny, legacy, and the weight of history itself, which makes it a far more meaningful addition to the series than you might expect from the surface. When it comes to Gog and Magog 2025, the film's budget and its eventual box office performance paint an interesting picture of expectations, production values, and audience reception. Let's start with the budget, which was significant by most standards, especially for a film that doesn't rely heavily on mainstream stars but rather on its ambitious premise and visual effects. The production team poured substantial funds into the film's special effects, set designs, and the intricate visual storytelling that weaves together the ancient myths with modern-day conflicts. This isn't the kind of movie that just throws some monsters on the screen and calls it a day. The filmmakers took great care to craft an immersive world, spending much of the budget on bringing these mythological beasts to life with top-tier CGI, as well as on crafting stunning, decaying landscapes that felt both futuristic and apocalyptic. The film also utilized practical effects in key moments to maintain a sense of grounded realism, especially in the monster encounters, giving the film a more tactile feel despite its sci-fi overtones. The investment in world building and the incorporation of metaphysical themes made Gog and Magog 2025 a visually impressive and technically advanced production. But while the production value was undoubtedly high, it's no secret that films of this caliber often walk a fine line at the box office, especially when they blend genres and rely on heavy mythological themes. This is where things get a little trickier. The film had a mixed box office performance, not a major flop by any means, but not quite the blockbuster success the studio might have hoped for either. It grossed a decent amount globally, but it didn't break any records or make waves in the mainstream film industry. A big reason for this could be the genre itself. While it's got all the ingredients of a cult classic, a blend of action, mythology, and psychological drama, it didn't necessarily appeal to the mass market in the way that more traditional blockbuster franchises do. For a movie like this, the audience is more niche, leaning toward fans of mythology and those who appreciate deeper, more thematic storytelling mixed with their action. The marketing, though well executed, didn't quite capture the full essence of the film. The trailers showcased the action and the monsters but didn't do enough to highlight the film's philosophical depth and intricate world building, which might have attracted a wider audience had it been marketed with that focus. Sometimes films that delve into these deeper themes have a harder time drawing in audiences who are expecting a more straightforward monster movie, which led to some confusion during its release. Audience reception also played a role in shaping its box office earnings. While the critics were divided, some praising the film's intellectual depth and symbolic undertones, others complaining about its slower pacing, the general public response was more lukewarm. Fans of the franchise and those invested in the mythological elements were enthusiastic, but casual moviegoers were less inclined to embrace its layered narrative and complex symbolism. The film definitely benefited from strong word of mouth among its core audience, leading to decent earnings in the long run, but it didn't have the kind of broad appeal necessary to make it a full-blown box office juggernaut. A significant contributing factor to the film's financial outcome was the fact that it was released amidst a crowded field of big-budget blockbusters and high-profile franchise films. In an era dominated by franchises like Marvel and Star Wars, a film like Gog and Magog 2025, with its blend of fantasy, psychological horror, and apocalyptic themes, simply had to fight harder to carve out its own space in the box office. However, the film's performance didn't seem to discourage the team behind it. The studio was reportedly pleased with the long-term earnings, especially considering its relatively modest marketing budget compared to the larger films it was competing against. In the end, it carved out a niche for itself, becoming a cult hit among fans who appreciated its unique blend of themes, intricate world building, and the way it turned monster movie conventions on their head. The marketing may not have captured its true potential, and the financial success was more modest than some had hoped, but the film's eventual cultural impact, especially on streaming and home video, was a different story. It may not have been the box office sensation that the studio envisioned, but it found its audience in the long run, and that has helped to keep the franchise alive for future installments. So,
You're ready to dive into Gog and Magog 2025 and experience all the monstrous mayhem and mind-bending mythology, right? Well, first things first, you'll want to know where to catch this beast of a film. Now, while Gog and Magog 2025 made its mark in theaters, it wasn't the kind of movie that would be showing in every multiplex across the country. But don't worry, there are still plenty of ways for you to experience the film. If you're one of those people who love the big screen experience, the booming sound, the epic visuals, the popcorn-fueled immersion, you'll want to check if it's still playing in select theaters. Some indie cinemas and specialty theaters often keep films like this on their screens a little longer, especially after a solid word-of-mouth buzz. Plus, for those looking for a truly larger-than-life experience, the film's visual effects really pop on the big screen. Trust me, the battle scenes and the intricate details of the monsters are definitely worth seeing in full cinematic glory. However, if you missed it in theaters, or just prefer the comfort of your own couch, don't worry because Gog and Magog 2025 is also available on a range of streaming platforms. While it might not have dropped on the mainstream giants like Netflix or Hulu right away, it made its way to more niche services that cater to fans of the genre, sci-fi enthusiasts, and cult film lovers. These streaming platforms tend to offer a mix of indie gems and high-concept films, so you'll be able to binge-watch Gog and Magog 2025 in your pajamas with a cozy blanket, the perfect setting for a deep dive into the world of ancient monsters and psychological drama. Now, if you're someone who likes to own the films you love, there's also the option to rent or purchase the movie digitally. Platforms like Amazon Prime Video and Google Play Movies typically offer movies for rent or buy shortly after their theatrical release, and Gog and Magog 2025 is no exception. Renting gives you the flexibility to watch it whenever the mood strikes, and purchasing it means you can go back for a repeat viewing, analyzing all the hidden symbols, visual cues, and nods to the larger mythology that you might have missed the first time around. For those who really want to get the full experience, and you'll want it for a movie like this, the absolute best way to watch Gog and Magog 2025 is to make it an event. Grab some friends who are into monster flicks, mythology, or thought-provoking action films, and have a mini-movie marathon. Consider watching it in a dark room with a great sound system or, if you're lucky, a projector. The film thrives on atmosphere, and the right setting can elevate your viewing experience. Whether you're watching it with a crowd in a theater, alone in your living room, or with your best friends at a cozy viewing party, Gog and Magog 2025 is a film that demands your attention. It's one of those movies that benefits from the full cinematic immersion, the sounds, the visuals, and the intense themes all working together to create something you can't just glance at. So, no matter which way you choose to watch it, just make sure you're ready to dive in fully. The world of Gog and Magog isn't one to be taken lightly, and the more focused your attention, the more rewarding the experience will be.